大家好，歡迎大家參加我哋今次呢個集點嘅特約活動。咁我哋嘅活動咧，陣間大概喺2分鐘後就會正式開始㗎啦。咁而家我見到好多觀眾嘅朋友都陸陸續續入緊嚟啦，已經。但請大家稍後片刻，咁我哋陣間活動好快就會開始啦。我都趁呢個機會係介紹下我哋自己先啦。咁我係 William，我係今日活動嘅主持啦。咁而我哋公司係集點海外，咁我哋係一個專注喺海外房地產嘅資訊性平台嚟嘅。我哋平時會發布同埋報導一啲有關房地產最新資訊嘅新聞同埋消息俾大家。咁如果大家對呢個海外房地產嘅投資或者對海外房地產嘅資訊有興趣，可以歡迎到大家到我哋嘅網頁啦、Facebook 啦，同埋我哋嘅 YouTube 度去瀏覽嘅。咁我哋都會我哋會每日都會有啲唔同嘅更新俾大家。係啦，我見時間上都差唔多啦，咁或者我哋今日嘅活動都正式開始啦。咁我簡介下今日嘅活動先啦。今日係一個特約活動啦，有我哋呢個 Val Group International 嘅 CEO Ashley 同大家去分享呢個英國倫敦一個鬆溫嘅物業嘅。咁而大家眾所周知，踏入呢個2022年，全球進入呢個加息嘅週期。咁而英國更加係一馬當先，喺年初已經宣布加息咗2次。係近14年以嚟嘅首次宣布連續加息嘅。咁而呢個加息週期勢必會影響到呢個投資者嘅決定。咁而可能投資者對回報會更加敏感嘅。而英國倫敦鬆溫一直以嚟都係受投資者歡迎嘅地區。咁究竟喺呢個加息週期嘅情況下，會唔會對呢個英國倫敦鬆溫嘅樓市有啲嘅咩嘅影響咧？咁所以我哋今日有Val Group 嘅 CEO Ashley 同大家去做分享嘅。Hello Ashley。
Good morning. Hi William. Thank you very much. Hi everybody. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Park Sayer, a development that's been built by Lendlease. So thank you very much for joining me. And without any further ado, I'll just get straight into the presentation. So if we could go to the first slide, please. First of all, today I wanted to talk about two things. Firstly, why we think now is a really good time for people to invest in London. And then the other thing I'm going to talk about is what's actually going on at the Elephant Park development. It's a development we've been working on for many, many years now, and give you an overview of this latest phase, which is called Park Sayer. So firstly, just in terms of why now is the right time to invest in the UK. Firstly, what we've seen in the UK is that house prices have started to really significantly increase, particularly during the COVID period. And what we've seen so far is the Office of Budget for Responsibility expects house prices now to increase by about 22% between now and the end of 2026. So really, really strong house price growth. Also, we've got interest rates that are starting to rise. They're very, very low at the moment, but they're very much starting to go up. We've got inflation, which is starting to increase. So inflation is very, very high in the UK. Construction costs are starting to increase, but also I think one of the main things that people forget that really drives the market is that there's a severe shortage of new housing. So that's something that we continue to see play out both in the UK, but very much in the London market. And more recently, we've started to see things like rents starting to increase, and also the pool of tenants is also starting to increase as many, many people are now priced out of the housing market. So if we go on to the next slide, I've talked about house growth, but it's really interesting to put it in the context of what's actually happened in the past 12 months. Now, this is ONS data that's come out actually on Friday, so it just came out yesterday, which shows the last 12 months of house price growth. And the thing that's really interesting we've seen is annual house price growth across the UK in the past 12 months has been 10.8%. But what we've seen particularly is it's the new house prices that are really starting to accelerate. It's demand for new housing is starting to grow significantly in the UK. So we've seen house price growth for new build property at 22% over the past 12 months. House price growth has been lower in London, so just 5.5% relative to 10.8%, and the southeast of the UK, so that's places like Surrey, etc. House price growth has been more than 12%. So our expectation is that London will start to catch up, and we'll see the trend turn where London growth becomes much faster than the rest of the UK over the coming years. And why have house prices grown so quickly? Well, particularly in the UK, I think there's a number of factors. Firstly, that the UK has been one of the first countries to emerge from the COVID crisis, so and particularly of the G7 countries. And now when you look at the UK, it's a very different situation to many other countries around the world. I know in Hong Kong at the moment that there's various different COVID measures which are all taking place. But the reality is in the UK, it's more than a 90% vaccination rate for the first dose. The COVID rates are starting to reduce. And actually in England, all COVID restrictions now ended in January. So there are no COVID restrictions in place, including travel. I flew back to the UK this morning. There are literally no restrictions to come into the UK. You don't even need to show that a negative test anymore. Anybody can openly return to the UK or travel in and out. And if we look at what that means, firstly, in terms of GDP growth, the UK, for the first time in a long time, is actually the fastest GDP growth country within the G7. So GDP growth in the UK is now almost 7%, which is significantly more than any other country in the G7. So the US, for example, is less than 5%. Places like Japan, GDP growth is literally just a little bit more than 1%. So there's been very, very rapid growth of the UK economy generally in the G7, and that's anticipated to continue over the next few years. The other thing that's driving house price that a lot of people don't talk about is actually inflation. The Bank of England base rate target for inflation is actually 2%. UK inflation at the end of 2021 was 4.8%, so more than double the Bank of England base rate target. But inflation is anticipated to top out at more than 7% in April, and it now is anticipated that inflation is going to carry on at high rates until at least the end of 2023. So not only does that have a significant increase on the cost of living for most people, obviously you'll hear a lot about energy prices increasing at the moment, but the reality is this inflation means things like the cost of construction, the cost of providing housing is starting to increase rapidly, but also rents are going up as well. People talk about the property market being a great hedge to inflation, and what they really mean is that the costs involved with property, so construction and delivering property, but also renting, also increase in line with inflation. So it is a great hedge. So if nothing else, inflation will just continue to push house price growth for at least the next 2 or 3 years. The other thing that's still driving growth is interest rates. We've still got very, very low interest rates in the UK. People forget that the average interest rate in the UK over the past 20 to 30 years has been 9.3%. And it's hard for people to imagine, but it's been up to 17% in the late 70s in the UK. But even in between sort of 1995 and 2010, interest rates were still between 4 and 5%. So we've got a situation at the moment where the Bank of England base rate is 0.5%, but the reality is the expectation is that the Bank of England will push interest rates significantly over the next 12, 18 months in order to combat inflation. And the expectation now is that the base rate for the UK may well be north of 2% by the end of the year. So now, if nothing else, is an exceptionally good time to lock into mortgages with very, very low interest rates. And it's still possible to lock into mortgages with fixed rates for 2 or 5 years, which provides exceptional coverage for people on their mortgage payments over the next period. And I guess finally, the one thing that people don't talk about as well is the exchange rate from the US dollar to pound sterling. Obviously, the US dollar is a very good proxy for most Asian currencies. The long-term average for the US dollar to the sterling was 1.56, and we're still significantly below that. So there's still the potential, as interest rates grow, for the sterling to strengthen against the US dollar. And it is expected that interest rates in the UK will rise quicker than the US dollar, which means that most likely the currency will appreciate at a faster rate against the US dollar. So that it means that for people that are investing from offshore, there is a significant currency arbitrage that they're benefiting from. And we're starting to see that now in Val, where there has been a significant increase of investors coming to the market, looking to take advantage of the cheaper sterling at the moment. So for the first time in a long time, we've had a very, very busy market at the very start of the year, with capital coming from Hong Kong, Singapore, and China, but also places like Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Saudi Arabia. We're seeing a significant amount of capital come into our market. What I've been talking about now is things that have happened outside of the market. So things that influence the market, like interest rates and currency, etc. And they all obviously push the price of housing and create growth in the broader economy. But the reality is still the thing that drives housing is supply and demand. And if nothing else, the one thing that we've really seen in the UK market is a significant decline in new construction starts, because it's been hit by things like Brexit and then COVID, and demand hasn't dissipated. So we've got now a really significant supply-demand gap for housing. And it's really sort of shown in the London market, where housing starts have declined by 45% from 10,000 in 2015 to just more than 5,000 in 2020. And if you think about, it takes about 2 years to get planning permission, and it takes somewhere between 2 and 3 years to build a building. Even if developers were to buy land now and obtain planning permission, it means that, you know, we're still 2 or 3 years off new construction starting to catch up to what is required. And that really creates a problem for the UK housing market, because it means there just simply isn't enough supply to meet existing demand, not even taking into account demand that will increase as the economy opens up post-COVID. And if you look specifically in Southwark, which is where the Elephant Park and Park Sayer development is located, it is a very acute problem. So new construction starts in Southwark are 30% of the peak rate in 2015. In 2020, there were just 509 apartments that were started, houses or apartments that started construction in 2020. So that means that, you know, in 2022, it's likely that housing will come online. And at the end of 2022, there were literally 200 apartments or homes that were unsold and completed in the marketplace. So for somebody that wanted to go to the market and buy a house that they could move into the next day, there were literally only 199 new homes they could possibly choose from. So that really does highlight the supply-demand issue in the marketplace. And I've shown this actually graphically as well, because I think it's a lot easier for some people to understand. The top blue line shows new construction starts, where it was north of 1,800 new construction starts in late or early 2015. And that new construction has significantly declined. The other thing that we've seen as well is although the amount of completed and unsold apartments has slightly increased up to 199, there is really nowhere near enough supply to meet existing demand. and if we move on to the next slide, that situation has also played out in the inner London market. So the inner London market is, in London, you have the M25, that is the circular road that surrounds Greater London, but then in the inner London market, you've got the North and South Circular, and that really is the Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3. New construction starts have gone from 15,000 in 2015 to just north of 6,000 in 2020. So that's not much construction at all for a big city like London of 12 million people to provide enough housing to meet demand. And this obviously creates a situation where, as an investor, there's the two things that you want to see. There's extremely strong rental growth. We work with a company called Chase Evans on the lettings and management side. And we talk to them regularly, as you might imagine. They're saying the same thing to us. And whenever we speak to rental agents in London, particularly, they say exactly the same thing. They're saying rents are now increasing by between 25 and 30% across London. Their average void period for a rental property is now between 3 and 7 days. So very, very quick turnaround. As a landlord, you don't have many void periods where you're not actually collecting rent. And almost 95% of all properties in the market are let before the tenant actually even vacates. So for most people, there's actually no void period. And we're starting to see situations now where tenants are having bidding wars just to get a rental property. And we're seeing it all the time. I spoke to our colleagues in Chase earlier in the week, and they said the same thing. Every time they have a property, there's 4 or 5 people waiting for the property. There tends to be a bidding war, and what happens is the existing tenant gets into a situation where they're forced to pay significantly higher rent, and there's just no way around it. And there is essentially no vacant stock at the moment. So if you were going to go to the market in the UK and look for a home to rent, there is essentially nothing for you to go and rent. And that obviously plays out to house price growth as well. So within the UK, we've looked at some of the different larger agents that are promoting residential projects in the market and do a significant amount of research. 2 most well known are Jones Lang and Savills, and both of them forecast significant house price growth. So in the London market specifically, Jones Lang are forecasting 6, then 5.5, 3.5, 4, and then 4.5% growth in capital values across Greater London. The Savills figures are specifically for the prime central London market, but also what we're seeing as well is the rents are starting to increase as well. And this is a situation we haven't seen a lot in the UK recently. We haven't seen significant rental growth. Now we've got a situation where rents are really being driven by this supply shortage. And people in the market have been saying this is going to happen for a very, very long period of time, because you could just see the supply not meeting demand. And that is actually now happening. So our expectation is actually that rents will probably grow at a much faster rate than what these agents are forecasting, because agents tend to do 2 things. They're very conservative, but also they look at a much broader pool of stock. So they're looking at both new build and secondhand stock when they make their forecasts. We only really look at new build, and we expect new build prices to significantly outperform the rest of the market.
係好多謝 Ashley 嘅分享。頭先我都第一個用廣東話做一個簡短嘅總結啦。咁頭先 Ashley 咧就分享到而家現時佢覺得係一個好好嘅時機去投資一啲英國嘅物業嘅。咁因為佢提到2021年英國整體嘅樓價已經上升咗 10.8% 啦，而倫敦咧喺上年係上升咗 5.5% 嘅。而且嚟緊呢個喺2月11號咧，所有嘅疫情嘅過去嘅一啲旅遊限制，亦都會全部取消。而面臨緊一個就係近幾年喺一個好高通脹嘅時候， 喺呢個情況下，無論好似建築成本或者係啲銷售成本，都會大大提高咗一啲未來物業嘅樓價嘅。咁而喺而家目前個利率同埋呢個匯率嘅水平都係低於平均嘅水平嘅，所以而家現時係一個幾好嘅機會去投資呢個英國嘅物業啦。最後佢分享到一啲市場上嘅數據，就好似近5年佢喺英國倫敦一啲建築嘅供應量減少，而好似頭先分享到喺呢個2020年嘅新建築咧，就只係大概佔2015年嘅時候嘅45% 嘅啫，所以係見到而呢個未來嘅新供應量係越嚟越少嘅。咁而喺呢個情況之下咧，佢喺英國倫敦呢啲核心嘅區域咧，佢嘅租務需求仍然係非常之大量嘅。好似係呢個英國倫敦佢嘅租金平均租金上升咗25到30% 啦，而甚至係超過90%嘅租務咧已經係話喺佢上一手租客搬離開之前已經成功招到租嘅，所以見到佢而家呢個喺租務市場係非常之活躍。所以建基喺以上咁多種嘅原因咧，而 Ashley 認為現時係一個好好嘅機會去投資英國嘅物業嘅，特別係一啲英國倫敦市中心嘅物業。Thank you, Ashley. Would you mind share some project details with us?
Absolutely. So at Val, we're really delighted to be working with Lendlease on the Park Sayer project in central London in Elephant Park. So what we wanted to do today was just give you a very quick overview of what's happened at Elephant Park and then drill down to actually Park Sayer. So if I go to the next slide, Park Sayer is part of the regeneration of the Haygate estate, which is called the Elephant Park, and it's part of a much broader master plan that Lendlease have done, which is one of the largest Zone 1 regenerations that's ever taken place in the London marketplace. It's a development that we started working on at the very, very start of the development many, many years ago. And the master plan developed by Lendlease was to deliver 2,689 new homes in a central London Zone 1 location. But the thing that we really like about this master plan is it's not just housing. It brings a number of other things to the development, namely a significant amount of new retail, and it's a brand new development with a brand new park in the part of the development. So there's a significant amount of green and open space. So and we've really seen this space evolve over the years as we've been going backwards and forwards to Elephant Park. So it was essentially a place that not many people wanted to go at the very, very start of this development. And we've seen the location significantly transform in the past 3 to 5 years. And just to give you a sense of the scale of the development, you can see it there. It's the development in the bottom right-hand corner that's surrounded by the white line. But it also shows you just how close this regeneration is to both the Thames and central London. So at the top left-hand corner, you can see the London Eye, which is a very, very short distance from the development, but also things like the City, the Shard, St. Paul's Cathedral. It really is on the doorstep of central London. And it's quite unusual to see such a large development take place in Zone 1, but particularly at this price point. If I go on to the and what's happening is not only are Lendlease regenerating this area, and obviously they're the largest part of the Elephant Park regeneration, but there's also a £2.5 billion regeneration which is taking place in Elephant and Castle. So not only are Lendlease building 2,700 new homes in the location, there's also a significant amount of new developments taking place outside of that as well. So right on the center of Elephant and Castle is a shopping center. It's a new shopping center that's being developed. It's likely to be open in 2025, as well as the University College of Communication are coming there. And there's also a number of other residential developments that aren't as well located, but are taking place on the periphery of the Elephant Park master plan. And we know from experience that when a significant regeneration takes place, it creates a significant amount of growth, particularly if it includes retail and open space, because people just want to be close to other people, they want to be close to growth, and they want to be close to amenity. And this development has all of those things in significant amounts. This was a development that started at about the same time as the regeneration of the Battersea Park, Battersea Power Station. And what we've seen is Elephant Park has grown significantly in terms of number of people that have come there, the local space and actual capital values. And the reason is because it's at a price point which is far more affordable. Whereas with Battersea Power Station, we've just seen a situation where the development started, pricing went up initially, and then it stalled. This is a very different situation. This is a development that appeals to a very broad section of people. And there's a number of reasons for that. If I go to the next slide, it's because of the amenity. And here are a couple of shots you can see in terms of what's going on the ground in the retail plane. There's cinemas, there's restaurants, there's bars, there's things for people to do. And that really is the driver for activity, because people don't want to go to housing estates where there's nothing else going on. So that's been a significant driver in this space. Go to the next slide. And we've had, as part of that, new universities are coming because they like the space, they understand the central location. So the University College, the London College of Communication have set a new campus there. So that's attracted a significant amount of young people that want to rent apartments and be in the local area, and it creates a vibrancy in the location. And interestingly, what has happened was Southwark was really crying out for new housing. Southwark's one of 12 inner London boroughs. It's exceptionally close to the Thames, as you might imagine. It's immediately south of the Thames. It's got a whole bunch of things that are going on there. But one of the things that's really significant is it's got a significant population. There's about 300,000 people living in Southwark, which represent about 130,000 households. The things that's happening is the population is forecast to grow. More and more people are moving to Southwark as this regeneration of Southwark takes place, because the reality is Southwark is still one of the locations that provides relatively affordable housing in London that's close for people to commute to work. It's got about 80% of the people are working age, and there's about 92,000 jobs in just Southwark alone. The makeup of those households is as is changing, as we've seen all over the place. So most of the households now are one person, one family household. So they're looking for smaller accommodation that's centrally located where they can get in and out of town. And again, of that 300,000 people that live in Southwark, about 22% of them are renters. So there's a huge rental market in Southwark that people want to take part in. And the reason that Southwark is so popular is because of its central location. It's literally on the bank of, well, not literally, but it's very close to the bank of the Thames River. It's exceptionally easy to get to most of the major centres in the UK. So, sorry, in London. So the City, the West End, and Midtown, which Midtown is Holborn, where people want to get to go and work. It's extremely close. It's very easy for people to get in and out of the city to go to their place of work or to go to different education centres, which makes it so popular. And that's played out again with communication. So the Elephant Park development is a 4-minute walk. So it's literally on the doorstep of the Elephant Park tube station. And the reality is that provides really, really easy access to most of the parts of central London that people would want to possibly go to. So Paddington, which is probably the furthest landmark that people would want to go to in their daily commute to get into London, is just 19 minutes away by tube. But things like Waterloo, Westminster, Oxford Circus, Bond Street are all 10 to 13 minutes away. So for somebody to get to their local place of work, whether it be the West End or the city, so places like Bank, it's a very, very short commute. And that's the thing that makes it so popular. There are also a number of universities that are some of the UK's most prestigious education settings, which are located a short travel to most of these, to this location. So things like Central St Martin's, King's College, the London School of Economics, Imperial College, London Business School, and the UCL, the University College of London, are all a 20 to 30-minute commute from Elephant Castle. So it's very, very easy access for young people who want to be still located in central London. They can be somewhere that's affordable, but travel and commute easily in and out of major universities, and be in a place where there's retail, bars, restaurants, and local vibrancy that they want to be part of. And again, as we sort of said, it's a very, very short commute to some of the major employment hubs, which is why such a significant proportion of the local residents are of working age, because it's a 4-minute commute to London Bridge, a 6-minute commute to the city, and even places like Oxford Circus or even King's Cross, which are on the other side of the city, are literally a 10 to 16-minute commute. So it's very easy for people to get in and out of work. In terms of the development itself, we've been, as I said, we've been working on this development for many, many years. This is part of the final phases of the Elephant and Park regeneration. And the thing we really like about the Park Sayer development is that it's really some of the prime locations within the development itself. As you might imagine, as a developer, if you're doing a large master plan development, what you tend to do is build the outer locations first, and then build on pricing, and then build the really premium product towards the end of the development when the location's been established, pricing's been established, and there is actually a very significant local demand for that product. And that's exactly what we've seen at Elephant Park. So Park Sayer is the tower that we're talking about today, is located right on the edge of the park. It's got unbelievable views across the city, but it's also the prime location within the Elephant Park development itself. And these are just a couple of shots of the green space that you can see within Elephant Park. So that's the tower itself. But the reality is it's very, very unusual to find a central London location where you can buy new housing, where you are literally on the doorstep of green space. It just doesn't happen. So, the closest locations that you would see in London that offer this sort of amenity in terms of green space would be things like Hyde Park and Regent's Park. And this is, simply significantly cheaper than any of those other major locations with anywhere near that sort of green space. And one of the things we talked about as well is the retail space. So what has been done with the Elephant Park master plan itself is to design a space where there's lots of residential accommodation, but it also has these boulevards that provide leisure, F&B, restaurant, high street shopping, health and well-being facilities right on the doorstep for the residents. So there's been a significant amount of thought that's gone into providing this. And what's great about it is it's not a ridiculous amount of retail in a specific location where everybody's competing against each other. It's small, well-thought, low-level retail space that provides great space for some of the best retail providers and restaurant providers to want to come and occupy. So, as a consequence, we've seen most of the major retailer, F&B restaurants move into Elephant Park because that they know that there's a significant pool of customers on their doorstep. And it really is an exceptionally vibrant location now. And here are a few shots of the retail space. So you can see it's not fictional. It exists. We go there all the time. It's one of our favorite places in the office to go and have drinks after work and go for a meal. It is a really popular location. And if I talk about the development itself, Park Sayer is a development that's been built by Lendlease. Lendlease is obviously one of the world's largest developers, very, very famous for building large regeneration developments. The development itself is 229 apartments and forecast to complete in Q4 2024. So the great thing about that is it gives people lots of time to plan to obtain a mortgage and get ready to purchase a home. The development is held by a 250-year lease, so a very, very long-term lease, and a very, very low ground rent. So ground rents are £300 to £375 for a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. And the other thing as well that we really like about this development as well, from a rental perspective, it's got an extremely low service charge for this type of development. So for the facilities that it offers, £5.30 is quite a cheap Zone 1 London service charge, particularly when you think that development provides residents' gyms, lounge and workspace. It's got business suites, it's got gardens, it's got a sky lounge, there's a 24-hour concierge, and there's car club membership as well. So it provides a significant amount of local amenity within the building for tenants and occupiers to use. The apartments themselves are stunning apartments. The thing they've really got is amazing views over the city of London and also the immediate park area and parklands surrounding it. And they're built to an exceptionally high specification, as you might imagine from a developer the quality of Lendlease. So within the development itself, it's got a significant amount of amenity that I've talked about. You can see some shots of CGIs of what's forecast to come. So it's got a residence gym that will be coming, a lounge and workspace. And as we're seeing post-COVID, it's not that people want to move further out of London or go and commute for a long period of time. What we're seeing is people don't want to move. They just want more amenity in the building that they're living in. So it really ticks a lot of boxes for those people. It's got local lounges and workspace so people can work and live at home and commute to the office. So it gives that work from home culture that many people want. It's got business suite in the space itself with fast Wi-Fi. It's got a residence lounge, which has got amazing views over London. It's also got dining space and roof terraces. It's got a 24-hour concierge that people really demand in this type of sport space, and also things like cycle storage that you might imagine, and access to car club membership. So most people we're seeing that are moving into spaces like this in central London, they don't want to own their own car. They just want somewhere so that they can actually use a car on their local doorstep in the times that they need to do it, and rent it on demand. And finally, this is a development with significantly high specification for both the price point and the location. So all of the apartments are built to that very high specification. They've all got underfloor heatings to the living room and bedrooms. They've got fresh air HVAC systems. The floors are made of good quality engineered timber flooring to the hallway, the kitchen, and the living room. The bedrooms are all carpeted. There's walk-in wardrobes to the master bedrooms. And I think more and more importantly, in a situation where we are seeing that energy costs are, really starting to increase, all of the appliances are an energy efficiency A-rated, high-quality Bosch appliances. And also, as is being demanded by tenants and occupiers now, is high-quality broadband. You can't work from home or dial into a Zoom every day if you don't have that broadband capacity, and that is a big issue in the UK. So the ability for people to access that broadband is a big deal. And apartments have video door entry as well. And finally, before I close, one of the great things about this development is it's not being built by a developer that this is the first development they've done, or they thought they'd have a go at building something in the London market. This is built by one of the world's most reputable developers. Lendlease has got a 60-year history of building some of the biggest landmarks and iconic buildings, not just in the UK, but all across the world. It's renowned for building buildings like the Sydney Opera House, the Twin Towers in Malaysia, and some of the really, really expensive high-end residential accommodation in New York. And, you know, as a sort of a kite mark to their quality, Lendlease were the developer that was chosen by the local council to redevelop the London Euston Station, and also to develop the San Francisco Bay Area for Google. So it really is a development that's built by somebody that's done it before. They've got the t-shirt, they know how these developments work. And by buying a product by Lendlease, you really do have the confidence that not only is the product going to meet what you currently need, it's also future-proofed against anything else that might come up in the future. And things like, you know, issues with cladding, warranties, etc. You know, you really do get that peace of mind with such a high-quality developer that's so concerned about their reputation. Okay, just to recap, we really think that Elephant and Park and the Park Sayer development is probably one of the best places for people to develop, to invest at the moment in Zone 1. And really, I think the things that, you know, we talked about them already today. It's that strong capital growth that's forecast. Knight Frank are saying that they expect 15% capital growth in the location. It's the connectivity of Zone 1. This is literally on the doorstep of some of the UK's and London's biggest universities and places of employment. It's part of this much broader regeneration of the Elephant Park location, where we've got the new shopping centre coming. We've got the University College of Communications. There's the potential for significant capital growth. There's that huge pool of tenants that's literally on the doorstep, but also this is part of the broader London UK regeneration that's taking place. The expectation now is that capital values will really start to grow significantly in London over the next 2 to 5 years. And likewise, we've got a situation where rents are really starting to grow as well. So thank you very much for listening to me today. We'd love to speak to you more about Park Sayer. Steve and his team of sales agents are available to go through the detail of the product for you and explain the availability as well. We can give you forecasts of rent, capital growth on all of the apartments we've got for sale today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashley。好多謝 Ashley 同我哋分享。咁我最後都做一個少少關於項目嘅總結嘅。咁頭先 Ashley 同大家分享咗一個位於英國倫敦松溫南邊 Elephant Park 嘅一個項目啦。咁而本身 Elephant Park 呢個地方就正值面臨緊一個價值2.5 billion pounds 嘅都市更新計劃嘅。咁而呢個計劃就叫 Elephant and Castle New Town Central Scheme。咁而喺呢個係一個集合呢個零售、商業同埋住宅於一身嘅新嘅大型都市更新計劃，佢可以滿足晒生活嘅所需啦。而佢介紹嘅項目 Park Sayer 就正正位於呢個項目園區裏邊嘅，係最後一項嘅建築嘅，會喺呢個2024年嘅秋天完工。咁而佢附近嘅交通同地理位置咧，佢喺步行2分鐘可以到 Elephant and Castle Train Station， 4分鐘到 Tube Station。咁而且佢喺5分鐘以內咧，係可以去到2間嘅大學，甚至如果喺20分鐘左右咧，就可以去到5到7間嘅大學。咁講完返學，然後去到一啲工作嘅需求上咧，佢可以去到4分鐘去到 London Bridge。6分鐘去到 The City 嘅 area， 同埋有啲10分鐘可以去到 Osborne Circus 嗰邊嘅金融啊，或者係返工嘅地區度嘅。咁而呢個所以呢個來方就預計喺未來5年咧，喺呢個項目咧係一個好好嘅投資。佢預計嘅呢個 capital gain 咧係有成15% 咁多嘅，所以佢係一個好值得去投資嘅項目啦。咁亦都最後好多謝阿 Ashley 嘅分享啦。咁而佢 係啦，咁如果大家有啲咩嘅對於項目想了解多啲，或者係有啲嘅任何嘅問題咧，都歡迎可以去聯絡翻佢哋嘅同事咧。當初同你 send link 俾你嘅同事啦。咁同埋最後做一個少少嘅廣告嘅，就係呢個係提到物業巡禮啦。咁我哋今次就同大家去了解到 Elephant Park 呢個地方。咁而我哋下星期亦都會有一個倫敦松溫嘅項目巡禮。但下一站我哋會帶大家去到呢個 City of London 倫敦市嘅核心中嘅核心。咁如果大家有興趣嘅，可以留意翻我哋嘅 Facebook 啦、YouTube 啦，同埋我哋嘅 website 嘅，咁之後可以再報名翻我哋下星期嘅活動咯。咁我哋今個星期嘅活動亦都圓滿結束啦。咁多謝大家嘅參與 ，Thank you，Thank you Ashley，Thank
you very much，
拜拜，
拜拜。